The next war won't begin with sirens or soldiers. It will begin with outages, shortages, and silence. Here's what nobody tells you. Modern conflict no longer needs explosions to cause damage. It only needs access to data, to payments, to supply chains people assume will always work. And that is why warnings about 2026 aren't about fear. They're about pattern recognition. This is where the pattern begins. Every major power rivalry in history escalated first through economics before it ever reached open confrontation. In the early 20th century, naval blockades and trade restrictions preceded World War. During the Cold War, proxy conflicts were backed by sanctions, technology denial, and financial pressure. Today, those tools have gone digital. Code replaces cannons. Payment systems replace ports. Markets become battlefields without uniforms. Here's why this matters. Global economies are now fused through software. Electricity grids, hospitals, shipping lanes, banking systems, and food logistics all depend on networks that can be disrupted remotely. A cyber attack doesn't need to destroy infrastructure to paralyze it. It only needs to interrupt trust. When systems stop responding, panic spreads faster than facts. Let me show you exactly how this escalation already started. In the 2000s and 2010s, early cyber operations targeted government databases and defense systems. Then the scope widened. Financial institutions were probed. Energy companies were tested. Supply chains were mapped digitally. At first it looked like espionage. Then the bill arrived. Attacks became bolder, more frequent, and more deniable. Everyone thought they were safe. They weren't. The danger wasn't what these attacks destroyed. It was what they revealed. Systems optimized for efficiency had no margin for disruption. Global just-in-time logistics worked beautifully until one missing component halted entire industries. One blocked port, one frozen payment rail, one corrupted update. Not war, pressure. That's the distinction. Analysts suggest economic rivalry now functions as continuous low-level conflict. Tariffs, sanctions, export controls, currency pressure, and cyber intrusions operate together. Each action alone looks manageable. Together, they reshape global behavior. Here's the mechanism. Economic pressure weakens trust. Cyber pressure exploits weakened trust. Retaliation becomes asymmetric. No one fires first because no one can prove who fired at all. That ambiguity is the weapon. It allows escalation without accountability. At first, it looked like competition. Then the bill arrived in layers. Companies began duplicating supply chains. Governments subsidized strategic industries. Capital shifted from efficiency to resilience. Costs rose. Growth slowed. The global system didn't break. It hardened and fractured. Here's the trap. When conflict becomes invisible, societies underestimate its scale. People expect wars to be loud, but silent wars are easier to sustain and harder to stop. They don't trigger treaties. They trigger normalization. And the unresolved question emerging now isn't whether cyber wars and economic rivalries are escalating. It's whether anyone will recognize the moment escalation becomes irreversible. Pressure doesn't stay contained forever. It accumulates, then finds release. That's the part history makes clear. Here's what nobody tells you. Great power conflict rarely erupts because leaders choose chaos. It erupts because systems built to apply pressure leave no off-ramp. This is where the pattern tightens. In past rivalries, economic warfare was meant to coerce without bloodshed. Instead, it hardened positions. Sanctions invited counter-sanctions. Trade restrictions invited industrial duplication. Financial exclusion invited alternative systems. Each move reduced dependence and increased fragmentation. Let me show you exactly how this plays out in the modern cycle. Cyber operations disrupt trust. Economic measures reshape incentives. Retaliation follows, but not symmetrically. One side targets data, the other targets logistics. One freezes assets, the other restricts rare materials. No single act looks like war. Together, they create one. Here's the mechanism. Once rivals begin insulating themselves from each other, the cost of escalation drops. Interdependence once acted as a brake. Fragmentation removes that brake. Analysts suggest that by the mid-2020s, enough redundancy may exist for countries to tolerate prolonged disruption, making escalation more likely, not less. At first, it looks like resilience. Then the bill arrives. Redundancy costs money. Fragmentation slows growth. Inflationary pressure rises. Political patience thins. Leaders face publics paying more for less stability. Pressure moves inward, not collapse. Compression. That's the first phase. Economies don't fail immediately. They strain. Cyber incidents increase. Financial volatility spikes. Supply disruptions become normalized. Each event is explained away until the frequency overwhelms denial. Here's the trap. Invisible wars remove the shock that once forced diplomacy. There is no Pearl Harbor moment, no single line crossed, just accumulation. Retaliation becomes routine. Escalation becomes background noise. Some scenarios suggest 2026 could mark a containment phase, where rivalry stabilizes into blocks with limited interaction. Another scenario points toward economic fragmentation, where global trade slows and digital borders harden. A third, still conditional, indicates uncontrolled escalation, where a cyber event triggers cascading failures no one intended. None are guaranteed, all are plausible. Here's why this matters now. Cyber wars and economic rivalries don't announce themselves as wars. They announce themselves as inconvenience, inflation, outages, and uncertainty. People feel the effects long before they understand the cause. The danger wasn't escalation itself, it was normalization. Once societies accept constant disruption as the cost of competition, the threshold for crisis rises. And when a real shock arrives, response time collapses. So the final question isn't whether 2026 will bring visible conflict. It's whether the systems already under strain can absorb another layer of pressure without snapping. Because when wars are fought through keyboards and contracts, the moment they begin is invisible. The moment they end is not.